Number 1, I said to name the organ. That's the duodenum. You recognize it as duodenum because you see a villus, that means it's small intestine. And then you look down here and you see duodenal glands, therefore it's duodenum. Number 2, I pointed here and said name the layer. That was right here. That's the lamina propria. Number 3, I pointed right in here and I said identify this structure, intestinal gland. Intestinal gland. Good? Questions about any of that? Okay. Number 4, I asked you to name the organ, ovary. This is new from today, so if this was harder, this is brand new. That's the ovary. And then number 5, I said to name these cells, fecal cells. T-H-E-C-A-L, fecal. No. That's a good question. The more you learn about the ovary, when we get to the reproductive system, there is theca interna and theca externa. For our purposes now, you're just calling that whole group of outer cells fecal cells. That's fine. So again, just to review, because it's up here, the inner cells here, these would be granulosa cells. The outer cells here, these would be fecal cells. Number 6, identify the organ, pancreas. Number 7, identify this structure here, pancreatic acinus. Pancreatic acinus. This, of course, would be the pancreatic islet here. That's how you could recognize it as being pancreas. Number 8, identify the organ, liver. And then number 9, I said to identify any of these white spaces that you're seeing down here. Those are all sinusoids. That's one of the best ways to recognize that you're in the liver. Okay? Those are sinusoids. Number 9, I said to identify this structure, hepatic portal venule, or branch of the hepatic portal vein. I know it's low power, but even here I can see that this would be the bile duct, because the epithelium's thicker. This one here would be the hepatic arteriole, and here's the hepatic portal venule. We are up to number 11. Number 11, I was pointing here and said name this layer, simple columnar epithelium with microvilli. This is part of the small intestine. I'm pointing at this layer that's on the outside of the villus. This layer here, simple columnar epithelium with microvilli. Sure. If you said with goblet cells and microvilli, great. That's fine. What number am I on? Number 12, then I came down here and said identify this layer, muscularis mucosa. Muscularis mucosa. Notice I didn't ask you to name the organ because you can't see the submucosa well enough to know if it's duodenum, jejunum, or ileum. You know it's small intestine, but you can't really tell which part of the small intestine you're in. 13, name the organ, parathyroid gland. Again, new for today, so you missed one, it's probably one of these. Parathyroid gland. And then I asked you to identify these cells over here. These are oxaphils. Oxaphils, remember, you can see the cytoplasm. So I can see the nucleus, but then I can see this pink cytoplasm around it. I can see the nucleus, and I can see pink cytoplasm around it. That makes these oxaphils. Compared to all these cells over here, these would be chief cells. Notice I can't see the cytoplasm, it doesn't stain. So all of these dark nuclei, these are all chief cells. These over here, these clusters where I can see the cytoplasm, those are oxaphils. Again, just one more chance to see that all together as a group. Number 15, name the organ. This is the stomach. This is the stomach. It's a slide I just found on the internet, but it was a really good slide because it had the surface epithelium. So this is stomach. 16, I said to identify this structure, gastric pit. Gastric pit. That's how I know I'm looking at stomach, right? Is I come and I go, oh look, it's flat across the surface, therefore it's not small intestine. It's either stomach or colon. Then I try to follow my way down from the surface, and I can only dip part of the way down, and then it turns into all these separate little profiles down here. Meaning I have pits, and I have glands. If it was colon, I I would just see one straight gland going all the way down. So flat across the surface tells me it's either stomach or colon. And then I look and I see, can I follow this dip from the surface all the way down, or does it only go part of the way down and then turn into several other little glands underneath? So this was a gastric pit up here. That was number 16. 17, I said name this layer, submucosa. Number 18, adrenal gland. I asked you to name the organ. Adrenal gland. Number 19, name this layer, zona reticularis. Might not have known the vocabulary yet for that, but if you understood it as the third layer in, then you're in pretty good shape. So again, just because it's up here, let's review this because it's new. Here would be the capsule. Zona glomerulosa would be here. Zona fasciculata would be here. Zona reticularis would be here. Adrenal medulla would be here.
So how did you ask that question again?
I said
What
name the
layers
layer.
are there?
I said name the layer. Because zones are layers, right? So I asked you to name the layer. Kind of like I told you with digestive organs, that if I wanted to ask you adrenal cortex, I would have to put a bracket that goes from the medulla all the way up to the capsule. If you were identifying adrenal cortex. In the same way that if I wanted mucosa, I would have to bracket the epithelium, the lamina propria, and the muscularis mucosa. Make sense? Yeah.
So that's the way you're gonna put it on that bracket, what you want to
If I'm asking for a layer that includes several sublayers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you want the sublayer, you would bracket.
I would just point at it and say name this layer.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, if I'm pointing at something, be as specific as you can.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that clarify that a little bit? Okay. Number 20, identify the organ, sublingual gland. Sublingual gland. 21, I pointed here to help you maybe identify the organ. Here, I asked you to identify the structure. That's a serous demilume. That's a serous demilume that's sitting on the surface of this mucus acinius right here. Mucus acinius, the serous demilume, that's what tells me that you're looking at the sublingual gland. Mucus acinius, serous demilume, and then the 22 was a duct. That's a duct. Okay. So again, here would be a mucus acinius, here would be a serous demilume. Here's a duct. All right, next one. 23. Identify the organ, colon, or large intestine. Either way, colon or large intestine. 24. I said name this cell, goblet cell. 25. I said to identify this structure, this whole thing right here, intestinal gland or intestinal crypt. Either way. This whole structure here. Intestinal gland or intestinal crypt. Identify the organ, thyroid gland, 26. 27, name these cells, follicular cells. So 26, thyroid gland. 27, identify these cells, those are follicular cells. Those are follicular cells. Parafollicular cells would be like these cells out here. To review one more time. 28, identify the organ, testis. 29, identify these cells, interstitial cells of Leydig, or if you just called them Leydig cells, that would be fine too. Interstitial cells, I would accept. Interstitial cells of Leydig, Leydig cells, all talking about the same cells. 30, name this layer, muscularis externa. All of this, muscularis externa. 31, identify this layer, non-keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. If you didn't put non-keratinized, that was fine. You just said stratified squamous epithelium, that was fine. Okay. What organ is this? I didn't ask it. What organ is it? Esophagus. Esophagus. 32, name the organ, ileum. Your giveaway is that you can see villi, and you look look down at the submucosa and you can see Peyer's patches, ileum. 33 was to name this layer, that's the submucosa. 34, name this structure here, villus. That's the villus right there.
What was it, 33 or 34?
What's
That
that?
was
What was
34.
33 and 34?
33 was to name this layer, that's the submucosa. 34, name this structure, villus. Any questions? Things you need to see again? Woo! Huh? It's starting to make more sense in terms of